And welcome to the September installment of FFYF's First 5 Questions series. My name is Sarah Rittling, and I'm the Executive Director of the First 5 Years Fund, and I'm joined today by Senators Britt of Alabama and Tim Kaine of Virginia, who recently teamed up to tackle an issue top of mind for many in this country, parents and businesses alike: childcare. FFYF has been fortunate enough to work with Senator Kaine over the years in his efforts to advocate for early care and education. And in just her first year in Congress, or first 2 years in Congress, Senator Britt has quickly established herself as a leader on these issues. Today, we welcome them here to talk about their proposal, which will help lower the cost and boost the supply of childcare for working families. Senators, welcome. Let's jump right in.
Thanks, Sarah.
Question 1. We're going to turn it to Senator Kaine first. And then we'll go to you, Senator Britt. You're both very busy, high-profile senators with many demands on your time and attention. Why childcare? How did this issue break through for you, and why is it important to you personally? Senator Kaine?
Sarah, so I'm a good bit older than Katie, and she has a very current story. But when my wife and I were raising our 3 kids, we used every kind of childcare option, from public school, preschool initiative, in-home childcare, in somebody else's home childcare, church-based childcare, nonprofit childcare. And we sort of saw it all and the challenges of it. And, you know, we're 2 working lawyers with ample resources. If it was tough for us to negotiate, it was really tough for single parents or parents of modest means. But we also ran into some amazing early childhood educators and came to know that they weren't very well compensated when they were doing this super important work. So it was too expensive for parents. It was hard to negotiate, and the providers weren't being treated the way I wish they were. One of my 3 adult kids is a pre-K classroom aide, so has gone into the space, and I know how poor compensation is. So that's why it's been important to me as a mayor, as a governor of Virginia. We did dramatic expansion of early childhood, and then I'm on the health committee in the Senate. So together with Patty Murray, who's been such a champion of this, I really try to do as much work as I can. And it was Patty one day who said, you ought to talk to Britt. And so that was, I think, kind of the way we started to work together. And it's been a blast to work with Katie. And we think we've come up with a solution, not the solution, not the only solution, but a solution that's a little bit a different angle than the way most people are approaching the problem.
Same question to you, Senator Britt.
Yeah, Sarah. So thank you so much for allowing me to be on. It has been a real honor to be able to partner with Senator Kaine on this. As you mentioned, you've had a long tenure with him, and his record on this, both as a mayor and governor, is just been next level. So as we work to do this, I just thought about my own life experience and that of my siblings and my friends and the things that I was hearing back home. So when I had my children, I had gone back to law school and found myself with a newborn and an 11-month-old. So I often joke that on the scale of bad ideas, that one takes the cake. But I remember trying to find childcare in the midst of classes and not being able to get my children into the same spot. And then also there being a waiting list. Well, there wasn't a waiting list for me to go back to class. And so trying to kind of figure out all of those different dynamics was challenging. Then when we moved to Birmingham and I began to practice law, I remember my husband and I writing a check for our childcare that felt like we were writing a check for college. And we were fortunate to have a nest egg to fall back on, but know that that is not the case for many people. And I just consistently ask, how do people do this? And as we've moved into adulthood and listened to my siblings and my cousins, there have been many cases where women who I love in my life have had to make a decision about whether or not to work or to send their kids to childcare. And if a woman or a man wants and has the opportunity to stay home, I want them to have that opportunity. But if they want to be a part of the workforce, if there is, a dream that they are pursuing and a passion or for their family, I don't want childcare to be an impediment to them being able to re-enter the workforce. And so trying to figure out how could we have some simple but practical solutions that put parents back in the driver's seat, and that encouraged businesses, both big and small, to actually be involved in helping their employees with this really incredible challenge. So it was personal for me on a lot of levels. And when I came to the Senate, I wanted to be engaged in meaningful things. And like I said, I'm proud to be able to partner with Senator Kaine on this. And I feel good about the opportunity to move it forward.
And Katie, can't I prompt you on one other thing?
Yes,
Weren't-
please.
Weren't you also, I mean, very involved with, we call it the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. It's got a different name in Alabama, but you were hearing about this from your employer community all
Absolutely.
over the state too.
Yeah, so this is one of the, we look at the workforce challenges and shortages we have. And, several years ago, you may have thought you would hear just from one industry or another. And when I was president and CEO of the Business Council, and I would go sit down with our largest manufacturer or a mom and pop on Main Street or anything in between, workforce challenges were top of mind. And when I would talk to them about, why is that? They would talk about several people, star employees that had to leave the workforce because of this very issue. And so knowing, that we want our economy up and running and moving forward and creating opportunity for people, it depends on people's ability to actually engage in it. And so it was very clear that this was one of the top impediments to continued growth and continued creation of opportunity from our largest businesses in Alabama to our smallest. And so I think that's why too we've been able to gain so much momentum so quickly, because so many people see the real issue that this is and the multiple effects it has on communities across our state. And as you know, it disproportionately affects women. And we want to make sure that we're engaging as many people as possible in the workforce that want to be there.
Well, exactly. And I'm glad, Senator Kaine, that you moved us to question 3, which was about the workforce and the economy. And that's right.
It's so important. We can even come back to it.
Exactly. No, but it's a good, we can stick there because I think the connection that this issue of childcare does touch on so many parts of an individual's life, and certainly as a working family. And I think you articulated that really well, both of you. And then the economic or the employer aspect of it and workforce is so critical as well. Do you have anything else you want to add on that? We can stick there a minute.
I think Senator Kaine may want to talk about this, but I mean, that was one of the things. So that was another perspective that we brought to this conversation was, obviously 45F allows businesses, to be able to receive those tax credits up into $150,000, but expanding that to $500,000, really encouraging employers to be more invested in helping employees face this challenge head on. And then knowing that, Tim and I serve people all across our states, and we know that small businesses are the heartbeats of communities in every corner of our states. We know that they are the character of main streets and of cities and towns. And how do we allow them to be a part of this as well? And I am the daughter of 2 small business owners. So, I constantly was seeing growing up, just the struggles of a small business owner. And that is the American dream in and of itself. And so allowing those businesses to pull an portion of our bill up to $600,000 together, to kind of strengthen numbers there and be able to utilize 45F as well was really important to the 2 of us, and really proud that it's in there.
Well, one other employer thing I want to mention, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. And I just did a visit of a child development center on the Quantico Marine Base that I helped get funding through the Milcon budget to expand. But as I sat and talked to family members there, you don't want active duty military members to be doing their MOS during the day, but have a little part of their brain on, my kid's not in a good childcare setting. That they're going to be distracted and not doing their job. And then you want people who are good to stay in the military. You don't want them to leave because of inadequate childcare. The Quantico base is just an example, but I could give you many of military bases that don't have sufficient childcare on base. And so people are trying to go off base and find childcare, and they're having a really hard time. So yes, it's about private sector employers, but it also gets into national security and military readiness and recruitment and retention in the armed services space. So this is a big issue, you know, for kids, for parents, for providers, but also for the economy and even the security of our country.
Absolutely.
And I think that obviously the 45F that you talked about, Senator Britt, the childcare dependent tax credit, you know, offsets a lot of those costs and provides some peace of mind. And then of course the other savings piece too. I think that's, you know, when you're talking about the employer engagement, seeing the employers of all sizes, shapes, and public and private are really eager to be part of this as well. And so these adjustments would make a huge difference in that regard.
I
Yeah.
think, and the thing about Katie and I working on this is we are, Sarah, coming at it from a little different angle, because the traditional discussion here is about appropriations in the Child Care Development Block Grant or Head Start funding. Our proposal really leans into the tax code, 3 provisions in the tax code. One, that's the child care tax credit for families and making it refundable so that low-income families can really benefit by it. Second, the tax incentives for employers to provide child care assistance for employees. And then third, the availability or encouragement of people using flexible savings accounts to do pre-tax dollars that they can then use for child care. We kind of like the fact that we're taking some existing portions of the tax code and then kind of supercharging it. And that can combine together with the Child Care Development Block Grant and Head Start funding.
And
Absolutely.
that's one of the things too. I mean, he's exactly right. And I am on the appropriations committee and, you know, being a part of that. And he mentioned Patty Murray earlier, obviously Susan Collins, you know, they're all working and amongst a number of people proud to fund the Head Start and early education programs. You know, one of the questions too that we had in this was, you know, Head Start, particularly in Alabama, you know, you qualify for that, let's say $25,780. Let's say it's like somewhere about that. Well, what happens if you make $25,790 and that's about the right money? Then what happens? And so one of the things that we looked at and it was important to Tim and I is how do we make sure we're helping low and middle income you know, families or moms or parents in this process. And so not just, and I'm sure actually Tim can talk to this very directly, but we also put provisions in there to make sure that we were taking a look at that as well, Sarah.
Yeah, Senator Kaine, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I think we've given you the basics. I mean,
Yeah.
the 3 tax code provisions, one for employers, one for the parents, and then one for flexible savings accounts that employees can access with pre-tax dollars that enable them to better afford these expenses. You know, you put all those 3 on the table together with appropriators fighting hard on the, you know, to get funds for these programs, then you're really expanding people's options. But as Katie said, the point is, can we do something that really helps those who need it most? And a child care tax credit doesn't help much if it's not refundable at the lower income levels.
You both, you know, obviously really important pieces. We couldn't agree more. And you also look at another piece of this and the other side of this, which is the supply side. Senator Kaine, do you want to say a little bit more about that piece of the package and why it was important?
Yeah, the one piece of this that isn't the tax code piece is incentive dollars if states want to do, you know, retention strategies to keep people in childcare. When I visited the Quantico Child Care Development Center a couple weeks back, they really have a problem holding on to people, keeping people, because as salaries are going up, I mean, childcare work is satisfying, but it's tough. And if you can make more in a retail establishment than you can as a childcare worker, you may want to stay in the classroom, but you may gravitate elsewhere. And we're seeing that all over the Commonwealth. And so we have a pilot project in our bill that would be incentive dollars to states if they do retention bonuses. Virginia has done this very successfully. In probably about 13 or 14,000 childcare workers in Virginia have received a grant. And this is through our state legislature, Governor Youngkin, Republican governor, 2 Democratic houses. They came up with this strategy to provide incentives for people who come into this field and then stay. And the dollar incentive is really important, but the respect message that goes along with it might even be more important. We notice you, we care about you, we want you to stay, we value your work. And so that's the other component of this bill that's not related to the tax code, but it's just honoring the professionals who stick with this.
And Tim nailed it earlier when he said, talking about too, the, honoring the professional that's in this arena. And also when he was talking about, what it's like to be a parent with kind of a revolving door of professionals in that space. And you cannot blame these individuals for taking a better opportunity to provide for themselves and their family. And so at the same time, how do we create a space where it creates stability for these children? And you do that through respecting the profession and making sure that we can do better both in recruiting and retention. And we think that this program will help with both of those.
We do too. I'm going to pivot us just a little bit. Question about the issue, and more importantly, something near and dear to our heart. In this day and age, a lot of people don't necessarily see how important bipartisanship is and can be in getting big things done. What you're trying to do is a really big thing. And I don't think that some people watching really realize that members of Congress actually come together daily to tackle these and find solutions. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you've come together on this and importance of working across the aisle as we tackle big things.
Well, Sarah, I'll just start quickly. The sad reality is this happens a lot more than people realize. It's just cooperation isn't sexy and conflict is. So, people who are cooperating, it's like, okay, put that on page B35 or maybe nowhere. And if Katie were to say something really mean about me, like that would get ahead. Right?
That's right.
So I think this is, we do more than most people think. We should do more still. However, this is an issue like a Republican listening to her constituents or a Democratic listening to his constituents. This comes up over and over and over again. Sarah, you recently were with a Virginia childcare provider that's kind of unusual. It's a small coffee roastery in the very small town of Floyd, Virginia, and they have started their own on-site childcare for just a handful of kids of their employees and others. This is an issue in the most rural part of Appalachian Virginia, and it's an issue in the heart of, Fairfax County, the largest suburban jurisdiction in Virginia. I go nowhere without hearing about this. So whether you're a Dem or Republican, and wherever you are in this country, people are going to be tugging on your sleeve and telling you do something about this.
He's exactly right. I mean, we are hearing this in every meeting that we're in every corner of our state, but bipartisanship is here and it is alive and well. And I think this is a great example of it. And I wish the American people, to Tim's point, got to see more of what we do and things like this. And I think, when we share a common goal with someone on the other side of the aisle or anywhere, I think we have a duty and an obligation to the people we serve to get in a room and try to figure out a pathway forward. That's what our constituents sent us here to do. And so getting in that room and figuring out a pathway forward, I think is critical to solving some of our nation's toughest problems. And look, we've got a lot of issues that we need to deal with, and it is going to take people that share a common goal, getting in a room and working to figure that out. Building trust and respect amongst your colleagues allows you to have even more direct conversations, which helps you achieve results and solutions even faster. So I know that there are a number of us that are committed to continuing to do that. I think that's what America expects from us, and I think it's what America deserves. And I just appreciate you taking the time to cover this because a lot of times things like this don't get the kind of coverage for exact reason that Tim said. But the truth is, if we could get more coverage and we could get the word out there, it would help us build momentum, greater momentum, and build it faster. I mean, when I look at what this could do for somebody living in Jefferson County, Alabama, where the average child care cost is $10,622, currently, if they were a working single parent and their employer contributed to DCAP, their cost would be $5,622 a year. Under this proposal as implemented, their cost would go down to $622 a year. So from $10,622 to $622 a year. That is a game changer for anyone. $420 a month. I mean, imagine being a single mom working to make ends meet and have that type of dramatic difference. And so I appreciate you covering it, and I hope that we can continue to get the word out. And I think if we do, it'll also encourage more people to engage in conversations like Tim and I have engaged in on this one.
Most excellent. And we will do our part on that for sure. One last question for you. It's going to be quick. What gives you hope?
Things like this, honestly, things like this, because I think in an incredibly divided time that we're in, and obviously we're in the middle of an election season, I think everyone's Twitter feeds are full of all the things that we don't agree on. And the truth is, there is more that unites us than there is that divides us. And when we look at where we are as a nation and we look at the challenges in front of us, I believe that people on the other side of the aisle took the same oath that I do to the same Constitution, the same flag, and they love to serve the same nation. And so finding common ground and finding a pathway forward on critical issues like this one that are affecting people's ability to achieve the American dream, that are affecting our ability to generate opportunity within communities and more, gives me really hope about where we can go if we're still committed to doing things like this together.
I'll tell you what gives me hope, Sarah. So when we put out the press release on this bill, at the top of the press release was the names Kaine and Britt. But at the bottom of the press release was all of the organizations that have come on to support this. Organizations in Alabama, organizations in Virginia, national organizations, and that long list of stakeholders. And I thank them, but I also thank our staffs, Katie's staff and mine, who worked really hard to share the bill, get ideas, make it better, include their input. That group of stakeholders is frankly probably what's going to enable us to get this over the finish line. And the fact that they've joined with us in this effort makes me very hopeful that we're going to get it done.
Well, thank you. You've been incredibly generous with your time today. We appreciate it. You both give me hope, both your policy expertise and your commitment and your just drive for this. So we'll do our part. We thank you so very much. Best to you this week, and on to the next thing.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.